So let's get started on our back. Kind of a partial recline, so just let your knees stay bent as an aid to help your back release on the floor. And just take a moment to center into your breath, into the present moment. Let all those other worry things go to the background. Such a simple move. I wouldn't even do anything special with your arms. Whatever feels comfortable, that relaxes your shoulders. I sometimes just put my hands on my belly into the floor. And just take a few breaths like that. Kind of check in with your body. Anything that feels a little tender, send it some love. Like I said, tonight is going to be a little bit on the restorative end of the Yin Restorative. Not asking ourselves to do too much, just to feel and release and let go. And our first movement, just to warm up, is a little knee squeeze. So let both knees come towards the chest. A little bit of help with the arms around the shin. Just pull the knees very gently towards the chest. You feel that lower back elongate and let go. Little movements, not too strong, but a little bit of side to side. You'll get the whole upper sacrum and lower back, a little massage. And then if you can't, let go of that assist with the arms. Let the arms come to the side. Just keep your knees there. And make little circles with the knees. So the knees will draw a circle around. Nothing too strong, but this helps engage some of the core and massage the muscles. Few circles in one direction. And when you're ready, just switch sides and a few circles in the other direction. And we're going to actually stay on our back, but some of us are going to need to roll our blanket unless you've got it already rolled. I'll show you what I do. I go to this kind of quarter width of the blanket and try to do a very tight roll so that it's got some firmness. So a couple of you have an actual foam roller. You can try that too. If it gets to be too much, you'll just maybe go to something softer. But we are going to stimulate the upper back, which helps open the upper lung. So what you want to do is you want it to come right beneath, like along the lower scapula, the shoulder blades. And for most of us, that feels like it's like right underneath the armpits. If your arms can hang over the top of the blanket, that's what we're aiming for. And you can adjust that roll. If you're on a blanket, you can undo some of the roll if that's too high. You want some stimulation there. But you don't want it to be overly stimulating. And we're just gonna start with our knees bent. Let that pressure point begin to open those muscles in the upper back. Feel the breath get up into the upper lungs. I would suggest just starting with the arms kind of in a cactus position out from the shoulders. And as you breathe and release into that, some of you may want to extend the arms and get a little bit more stimulation in the shoulders, but just start easy and only do what your body's sort of inviting you to do, rather than push to an extreme. It takes a minute. Even those of us who practice relaxation, it takes several breaths for those muscles to get the message that they can let go. So just breathe and hold and make whatever adjustments you need to, so you can hold this for about 3 minutes. Also explore elongating the legs. Sometimes that actually helps with the release if it's not too much on the back. Just close the eyes. Let the mind begin to just be with the breath, be with the present moment. I don't know how many of you found the foam roller. I actually bring foam rollers to class sometimes because I think this pressure point release is so effective. About 30 more seconds. We are going to stay low, but sort of flip over to one side. Just, you can bend your knees if they're not bent, just take your time. We want basically the same position as the roll, but we want it on the side rib. So you'll feel the pressure. Some people have some tenderness near the breast, so you have to move around. You don't want anything painful. You can even keep your head up on your arm for a minute, but you do want some degree of pressure point release right into that armpit on the side. In the full pose we call reclining mermaid. You can, if you can rest your head on your arm down on the floor or on a block, and let the other arm come overhead if that feels good. If that begins to be too much, Much more important to just let this passive pressure point work. The other arm can stay lower or more relaxed. So explore that, and we'll hold this for about 1.5 minutes. Sometimes you can roll a little bit more up away from the breast, and you'll feel some new release points. But if you're finding you're getting that good sort of pressure point sensation, just feel free to just stay very still. The roll and the body weight's doing the work. Give yourself a couple of breaths to roll to the other side. Literally, you can just roll like a foam roller, kind of massage through the middle back, and just switch sides, finding the same kind of compression point. Because you're still, you might have things pop into your brain, even some emotions that get released. Just acknowledge them and let them go to the background. A couple more breaths and we'll release this side. And you're just gonna try to slide over to one side and come to a child pose. I actually leave my blanket roll there for my child, if that works for you. We like, if possible, to find a place to rest the head. So you have a little pressure point on the forehead, right at the third eye. So a block, or you can stack fisted hands, or just come down to the blanket. Just a little pressure really helps stimulate parasympathetic response. So not about stretching the spine so much as just being still in this very quiet face down position. So we will come into a slightly more active pose for the shoulders, but we don't need to move too far out of our child pose. We're going to come into melting heart, Anahata, where we come to all fours, we come to our knees. Generally, we want our buttocks to stay over our knees, but there's movement in there so you can get comfortable depending on your body proportions. And you just want to have the hands forward. These are our holders, our levers, to release the chest down towards the floor. Now, if your blanket's there, it might actually help. This is a very strong pose for me. I have stiff shoulders, so it's nice to be able to let go onto a block or a roll so you're not so deep. Now, if you're very open, you may not need the support, but just keep it on the edge of not too much. And hold this pose and breathe. The other modification is just to lower the elbows so they can give you a little more support, not so deep into that posterior shoulder joint. And of course, some days are better than others. You just have to find that sweet edge. You know you're stimulating something that's been a little contracted, but no pushing tonight. You can find a shape that lets you breathe very calmly and feels kind of sweet. From this pose, we're going to give ourselves a couple of breaths. We're actually going to stay prone, stay on our belly, but we're going to go into like a sphinx, kind of a lazy sphinx. I'm going to push the blanket out of the way. Let my legs come back. Elbows under shoulders. We often do sphinx as a nice, strong spinal elongation and back bend. You're welcome to do that if that feels good, but I was going to recommend a kind of lazy sphinx tonight, where you let the shoulder blades come together and actually sink between those arms. Very little muscle contraction is needed in this version of sphinx. The only effort you'll probably feel is just rolling those shoulders down away from the ears and together. That's the release we're trying to get. At least for this first version. Check your legs and your buttocks. Let them go too. It actually helps target the area we're working, not to hold tension in the lower body. Couple more breaths, and we'll just come out onto our belly. Another face down. We usually like to do a neck stretch here, so pick a cheek, pillow hands, and turn your head to one side. And just let the head be heavy enough. You get that nice passive twist to the cervical spine. No effort, just the position of the cheek on the hands. What's giving you the decompression. And we'll repeat a seal, Sphinx or seal, just to get a little lower in the back. With the same kind of lazy approach. Find a place where the arms are just holding the back. You're not really having to press or lift. The elbows can stay on the floor if that helps. See if you can get that same sense of just hanging, letting the shoulder blades, instead of being broad like we usually want them, they're actually aiming towards each other a little bit in this lazy seal. Sometimes I actually lift up just for a counter stretch, because letting the shoulder blades come together, if you're stiff on the front side of that shoulder cap, can be a little intense. We'll just let the pose go nice and slowly, a couple deep breaths, lower down, neck stretch on pillow hands to the other side. And just breathe. And come out of this, just make your way nice and slowly to hands and knees for some lazy cat cows. Basically, you're just using the freedom of the pelvis here to move and release any tension that might have built up in that back bend. So you can kind of look side to side, bending one elbow or the other, or arch and release in cat-cow movements if that's what your back seems to want. Just do a few rounds, just exploring what your best release is in this moment. going to do some dragons stretches from here. This is probably the most active part of what we'll do tonight, but I want them to stay kind of lazy too. Very definitely emphasizing the release rather than any spinal strength or forcing a back bend. So take either leg. I'm going to put my right foot forward, and the dragon is very much about this back leg. We want to come forward in front of the knee enough that we really feel that hip flexor in the back leg letting go. Everything else is the lever that's pulling those hip flexors along. Not too critical exactly how our feet is in front, or all those alignments when we're doing standing lunges. The knee can be a little forward of the foot. You can even wing out a little bit. You can stand up on your hands, or some of you will enjoy coming down lower to the elbows. Just see if you can find that point where, especially in that hip of the back leg, nothing's contracted. It's getting as long and released as you can get it. And just breathe. We're going to hold this for a bit of time. A minute and a half. Hands can be inside the leg or framing the leg. It kind of depends on how low you want to go. Think of that front leg as kind of just the incidental holder for that back hip flexor stretch. You've been in about a minute, so if you want to try slightly different, now might be a time to maybe scoot those back toes back a bit, or change the arm position, maybe go a little lower for this last 30 seconds. Now I'm going to have us switch legs. We're going to do a little bit more in dragon, but sometimes it helps to switch legs just to relieve the knee for those of you who have tender knees. So just come back to all fours. Little movement. If needed, we're just going to head over to that low dragon on the opposite leg. Focusing on the back leg, hip flexors, that area kind of from the top of the hip bone to the top of the thigh is what's getting deeply stretched. Iliopsoas. There's a lot of stuff, deep tissues in there. We usually just call them hip flexors. You got about 20 more seconds. Time to maybe adjust the torso, relieve whatever's taking the hit and move it around. Even slight changes of the angle of those joints will activate and release different tissues in there. So a little bit of movement is not a bad thing. Adjustment, I should say. Angle adjustment. And of course, you all know where it feels the least comfortable is probably your body saying, ooh, I need that. And then use your arms. Sometimes I curl my toes, actually move my back knee in so I can come back to an all fours, whatever works for you. Least effort to get to your all four. We'll actually go into another dragon lunge with your first side. This time, our foot goes forward, my right foot's forward, and we're going to angle it out. Sometimes this is called wing dragon. So we actually want the foot probably kind of come off the mat a little bit and angle out so that knees kind of open rather than our body being straight over the knee. We're going to bring it into a twist. So your supporting hand, in my case, it's my left hand, is my holder upper to turn my torso towards that front bent leg and just press. But where we usually give a lot of emphasis to the spine, you're bound to feel it in the spine. This time we're going to feel it more low, more in the hip, buttocks, groin. And you'll see that like I'm releasing my back leg so much that I'm almost on that underneath hip. If you can make it to the floor, you'll feel a lot of work on the outside, IT band, buttocks, and of course some in the spine, which feels good, but send your attention down low into that sacrum and hip area and twist. Don't worry about the foot staying totally flat. I almost always let my foot kind of angle out a little bit so I get more hip action with this wing of the front bent leg. You may feel more stable, a little more flat, and that's fine too. Couple more breaths. Same philosophy getting out. I actually kind of want to be over my back knee so I can just release that front leg and take a little child or a little moving all fours. Release a little bit until we feel ready to go into that wing twisted dragon on the other side. Don't be too surprised if the angles you choose on both sides are a little bit different. Our hips are just not totally symmetrical, so we have what we like to call a good side and a bad side. It's not really good, bad, it's just normal asymmetries in our body that demand a little bit different the tension in the joints. I haven't mentioned the neck. Mine feels a little stiff, so when you're holding the pose, you can look around and just release the neck, anything that feels good. It doesn't have to hang in one spot. That's not the kind of stillness we mean when we say still and yin. Sometimes it's just the moment to look to the other direction and give it some rest, release. Start thinking about coming out. You use my technique, you curl the toe, you bring that back leg underneath, more underneath the body so you can release the front leg. Then I'm just gonna invite us into a wide child. Just means we can release the hips, let them bend. The knees can stay wide. There's a little bit different release to the hips, and you can just stretch your arms out long or relax them by the side. Just a short counter pose here. Our next pose is going to be from a seated position, so help yourself up, no rush. We're going to come into deer pose, and lots of ways to get into it. If you can just come, sit on your sits bones, that's the main thing. Deer pose wants our buttocks to stay grounded. And then one leg is gonna try to be kind of in a pigeon shape, perpendicular, and then the same with the back leg. So here's the 90-90. Back leg is aiming back, front leg is aiming to the side. I cannot sit in a true 90-90 with both sits bones on the ground. So what I have to do is arrange my knee a little more forward in my back, or bring my heel a little bit more in, and you'll do the same thing. You're gonna find the shape that's one leg front, one leg back, that allows you to sit flat on your sit bones. So mine doesn't really look very 90-90, but I'm still getting hip action. Outward rotation of the front hip, inward rotation of the back hip. And if that just does not work for you, then you're gonna pick one of these legs and let the other one go. That's okay. You can work one at a time. It just may not be a shape that your body can get into. If you do have to raise the back hip a little bit, you're still going to get some good benefit. So pick your base legs. We're actually going to do this as a twisted forward bend, so an asymmetrical forward bend. Nothing strong. We're just going to allow the torso over that front leg. That's usually where I start, sort of aiming over the knee. And depending on how open you are, you kind of walk further and further to the side. So you feel the side body opening and the back twisting, keeping that hip in that 90-90. position and just release to your degree into this asymmetrical forward bend. If you have to stay up on your arms, more focus on the hips. If you're lucky, I see Tanya all the way to the ground. Good for her, she's probably getting a really nice release. Find your edge and just breathe here for a minute and a half. I like this pose even though my hips don't love it, because it's such a nice way to be asymmetrically working the hips, not both, like in a full saddle. And I really am a believer in working the side body of the back body. Why am I a believer in it? Because mine is really weak and really stiff. Couple more breaths, maybe 3 nice slow breaths, just to make that final little adjustment. Sometimes you find a little bit of space that you didn't have when you started, to just deepen and then begin releasing. Nice and slowly, just let your hands help you walk your body up and face forward. Release the most painful leg, usually the back leg. And you can do some windshields, whatever your hips seem to need, in preparation for taking that same pose to the other side, whatever feels good. So find your deer, other direction. Might not be exactly the same shape as you just had, so it's always an exploration, yeah? I like to stay sitting up for a minute just to check in with my hips, see if it can settle to the ground and actually ground, maybe not, and then begin the walk into the forward bend. Got plenty of time. The sideways forward bend, yeah. The target, besides the hips, which are always worked in this shape, is quadratus lumborum, which is kind of a big fan-shaped muscles on the side of the back. And I've recently discovered mine don't work very well, so I'm trying to give some extra emphasis to these. I really feel them in strengthening postures, but as we all know, those of us who do Yin, strength and flexibility are the two sides. You must have both to be able to do some of those poses or just climb the rock on the side of the mountain, whatever you want to do. Take the last few breaths to deepen or slightly modify, and just as a prep to releasing the posture and helping yourself sit up. And just because I think we've gotten a lot of muscle groups except maybe this inner groin, we'll just try a nice lazy dragonfly. So we're still on our sits bones. Find a V shape that we can support with our legs, even if that means kind of keeping them bent. Nothing too extreme. The forward bend is what's going to get into this inner leg, groin. So we're just going to soften the muscles so we can get deep into that fascial tissue and just walk our hands forward. Your forward bend might be just a bare lean into that edge. You might make the elbows or on your bolster. Some people can flatten out completely with their chest to the floor. For them, I don't know how they get any stimulation. Just find your edge and breathe. This is a great pose to see if you've got muscle tension that you don't need. I have a great little habit of flexing my feet very strongly, which automatically engages the shin and quadriceps. So I have to tell them to let go, maybe shake my feet a little bit so I can get deeper beneath those muscles, into the fascial tissue. And of course, I don't have to tell you, both stretches are advantageous. You can have a very strong yang form of this pose, where your feet are very flexed and you're pulling yourself forward, you're keeping your back straight, your whole back muscles engaged. Nothing wrong with that. You probably don't want to hold that for 2 or 3 minutes. This is a different stretch. It's for the deep tissues, ligaments, tendons, everything, all the connective tissue around the joint. And for those to get full benefit, you want to release the outer superficial muscle. Last few breaths to deepen or begin to release. Let your hands help you up. So you're still with pretty released muscles in the legs. You can take them and actually help them to come together. And we'll just shake them out a bit, get some energy back in them. just finish on our back. Do a little roll down if that feels good. Just keep the knees bent and round the spine so you actually can feel or pretend you can feel every little vertebra coming to the floor. And we're in partial recline, our knees are bent. We're just going to do a very simple twist so the arms can be out, away from the shoulders to support the upper back. And let both knees fall to one side and letting mine fall to the left. If you keep your feet in that orientation, when you come to the side, the knees won't stay together. They will separate. So it's a little bit different than some of the twists we do where our knees are very together or even wrapped. We just want to release the back in this manner. It's actually a very nice twist. Where the adjustments come in is a little bit how high your knees are. Keep your shoulders nice and grounded. Maybe turn your head away from the knees. More of a release than an active twist. And go to the other side just by gradually bringing the knees back to the ceiling, sort of checking your feet so that they're hip width, letting the knees fall to the other side, and watch them separate into their sort of natural separation for that hip joint. It's the same kind of release as when we do windshield wiper. Just kind of reorients the hips. We're heading into our Shavasana, so just breathe yourself there with as little effort as possible. Maybe one leg and the other leg. In Yin, we usually say that we like our legs a little bit wider. We actually go into something a little bit more star-shaped than a regular Hatha Shavasana, but whatever feels good. Your legs can be a little wider, your arms can be a little further out from the body. See if that helps encourage the release into the floor. Oops. A little body scan, see if you feel any points of tension. Your favorite tension point in your neck or your jaw. Your shoulders. Just see if you can find the nerve that tells it to let go. Hopefully you feel the heart rate slowing, the breath becoming shallow. There really is a measurable thing called the relaxation response. And very gradually just let the breath be a little bit deeper, a little bit more effort. Take a nice long sip of breath and turn it inside. Help yourself up to seated in super slow motion, just keeping the inward gaze. Hopefully thanking yourself for taking the time to nurture your body, nurture your mind. So appreciate you practicing with me. Namaste.